Hey, welcome back everybody, man. It is really good to see you. So Stoker here, and today we're going to be talking about the troop leading procedures and how to employ them so that we can accomplish our mission. Now, if you want to master your field craft or develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on future content. And I want to tell you right off the bat, this is not going to be an in-depth look at the TLPs. I'm just going to try to give you some key takeaways that you can employ on a day-to-day basis, regardless of the mission set that you're trying to accomplish. So what are TLPs? The Marine Corps and the Army both have troop leading procedures, or TLPs, and although they have some different verbiage in them, they essentially say and do the same thing. At the end of the day, is a sequence of actions that the leader utilizes to efficiently and effectively manage their time and resources to plan, prepare, rehearse, execute, and assess the mission. And so in this particular video, we're going to be looking at the Army TLPs, but just for your situational awareness, the Marine Corps troop leading procedures is to begin the planning, arrange recon, make recon, complete the plan, issue the order, and supervise. So they have 6. The Army has 8, so we're going to take a look at those. And so while the TLPs are a sequence of actions, one of the things that we have to get rid of is the linear thought or mindset that says I can't do B before I do A. So there's some things that happen throughout the TLPs. There's some things that may happen just based off of the situation that are going to happen before some of the other steps. In general and in theory, they are going to align themselves, which is why they're written the way that they are. But don't be afraid, to mix match or to do something ahead of time or to put off something until later. So the first TLP is to receive the mission. Now, how we receive the mission, there are some specified and implied tasks with all of the TLPs, and I'm going to try to hit on a few of the big ones. The very first thing that we want to do if we are receiving the mission is to give a back brief to our senior of what we understand that they're trying to tell us. If you're the one who's given it, as we'll see later on down the line, when we're talking about issuing the order, is we want to conduct a confirmation brief. But if you're on the receiving end, you want to do a back brief. If you're on the giving end, you're going to do a confirmation brief. And it's just to ensure that there's a shared understanding and everybody's on the same sheet of page and plugging on the same cylinders. And so once we receive the mission, the leader needs to conduct a very quick and hasty mission analysis. You're going to have a more detailed mission analysis coming up here really soon, but I want to be able to follow the 1/3, 2/3 rule when it comes to preparing for any mission. And so what that means is that I want to spend 1/3 of the amount of time that I have between time now and the end of the mission, 1/3 of the time, and to actually conduct and execute that mission, allowing 2/3 of the time to plan, prepare, and rehearse. You have to rehearse, man. You got to do that. So I want to take a quick look at the time that I have and try to backwards plan from there. And then I want to take a look at a very quick analysis on METTC, and I'm going to talk about METTC here in just a minute and break those down in a subsequent step. But you want to quickly understand what is going on, have some situational awareness as far as why you have a mission to do, what your obstacles are going to be, so that as you get ready to issue your order and start working on your plan, you're taking all these into consideration so that your tentative plan is going to be on point and you're going to have to make very minor adjustments. As soon as we can, we want to issue that warning order or that warn order, again, to allow subordinate leaders the maximum amount of time that they can have to prepare for their mission, because they may have specific things that need to be rehearsed or checked, or maintenance may be required. You're going to have some personnel issues, all kinds of ins and outs and ups and downs that you have to take into consideration. So the very first thing that you want to say anytime that you're issuing an order, it doesn't matter if it's an operations order, an op ord, a fragmentary order, or a frag ord, or a warning order or warn order, you want to say those words out of your mouth: warning order, prepare to copy. And so what that does, it gets everybody's ears pinned back and they're ready to listen. You got a piece of paper out and something to write with, and you're taking your notes. And you want to make sure that you issue these orders verbally and look people in the eye to make sure that there's a shared understanding. Because if you're seeing people who are getting lost in the sauce verbally, you can imagine how much more so it would be if I just try to lead by an email or a text or something like that. It just doesn't happen. So we need to make sure that there's a shared understanding. When we're issuing the order, we want to push out everything that we've received received, and then any of the short mission analysis that we've conducted, so that we can give these things to our subordinate leaders so that they can go prepare. And so that covers steps 1 and 2 of the TOPs. The third step is to make a tentative plan. And so this is where we start looking at the mission variables and taking these into consideration as we start to plan for the mission. Of course, how much time I can spend on mission analysis, again, was all based off of that 1/3, 2/3 rule. So I don't want to overextend on my planning either. I need to plan as quickly as I can so that we can prepare to get ready to go out and conduct the mission. So the mission variables are MET TC. Back in my day, growing up, we had MET T. We've since added the C, which is a good thing. But that's mission, enemy, terrain, troops, time, and civilian considerations. We're going to break these down really quickly. And so the mission is given to us, but we want to make sure that we understand the overarching mission and the purpose of why, understand that task and that purpose, because those are two things that we need to be able to give to those who are in our charge. So we need to understand our task and purpose in the bigger picture. And so we also need to make sure that we understand any of the constraints that exist, as well as the specified and the implied tasks, and of course the essential tasks that must be accomplished. So when it comes to understanding the enemy, there's really 4 steps that we need to take into consideration. The first one is to define or truly understand the battlefield or the operational environment. The second one is to understand the effects of the operation and in the totality of it, right? Not only on the enemy, but on the local populace as well as the terrain. Third one is to conduct a thorough evaluation of the threat. And then last but not least is to understand the most likely courses of action that the enemy may take. And then so when it comes to understanding terrain and weather, typically for the terrain side of the house, we're going to use the acronym OCOCA or OCOC. But we take these into consideration to understand the military aspects of the terrain and what that impact is going to be. And of course, we're looking at all of these things through an offensive lens as well as a defensive lens. In other words, I want to look at it through my perspective and their perspective, or the enemy's perspective, so that we can understand have a thorough understanding of what the terrain is going to be like and what its effects are going to be. So I need to take into consideration the observations and fields of fire, that is, what can be seen and what is seen. And I want to take into consideration key terrain, the avenues of approach, obstacles, as well as cover and concealment. And then when it comes to the weather, of course I want to take into consideration things like, is it going to be raining, or dry, and what the administrative or the logistical impacts may be. But because weather dictates is the wrong word, because weather impacts a lot of our ability to communicate and our signal equipment, I want to take that into consideration as well. So what's the light data, what's the solar data that's out there, if that's going to have an impact on me. Of course, if I'm on foot and doing a dismounted patrol, I want to be aware and cognizant of where the sun is rising and setting and all these different things, because again, all the way down to the finite detail, I want to take all of this into consideration, that everything is used to my advantage. And so the next step is initiate movement, and this is one of the steps that's likely going to happen a lot earlier than the step that we're in now, because when I issue an order to somebody, I'm probably going to tell them to go prepare or go rehearse X, Y, or Z, and that in and of itself is initiating movement. The spirit of this task is the moment when we're actually starting as a whole to move out. Maybe it's moving out to an assembly area or things of this line, but don't get ground down into thinking linearly that things have to happen in a specific order. And so the next step is to conduct reconnaissance. Now, why do we conduct reconnaissance? Really is to validate our assumptions and the things that we have assumed were true when we made our tentative plan. And so we're looking at the reconnaissance. Maybe it's a boots on the ground reconnaissance, which is always the best. Getting out and physically being able to walk the ground or see it with your own eyes. You can't always do that, so sometimes you have to be a little creative. Maybe you're talking to somebody else who was just recently out in the area. Maybe you're looking at some maps or satellite imagery. Maybe it's a drone feed, whatever the case is. But you need to get some sort of up-to-date information on what's happening in your area of operations, so that you can confirm that your tentative plan is going to be a success, or have at least a higher rate of success. And so the next step is to take everything that's already happened up to this point from receiving the mission, my mission analysis, making a tentative plan, and my reconnaissance, and I smash it all together. And now I develop a plan. I complete that plan, and I use a 5-paragraph format to do that. And it's going to take a whole other conversation piece to truly understand what goes into it. But I want to make sure that I get everything written down, and I take into consideration everything that's required from command and control perspectives to reports that may be required, timelines, just all of these things taken into consideration, so that when it's a complete plan, at least it's a 90% plan. But even on that note, you always need to remember, 100% perfect plan 10 minutes too late is worse than an 80% plan or 60% plan that gives you more time to rehearse and prepare to move out. So don't waste all of your time trying to write out the most detailed plan that you can. Utilize the time that you have, and to the best of your ability, use that 1/3, 2/3 rule. Right, so next up is to issue the order. And again, the first words out of your mouth needs to be op order, prepare to copy. And that gets everybody's minds attuned, and pens and paper out, and we're ready to move forward. You may need to strongly encourage to have some sort of visual aid, even if it's a visual aid of the op order in paper that you can pass out as well. But maybe you have some overlays that are done up, a terrain model, that you built on site. There's all kinds of creative ways that we can use some different methods, so that as we're explaining that concept operations, how we're going to do what we're getting ready to go do, people can visualize and they can see and understand that way you're impacting different layers in the mind, so that there's a true shared understanding. Right, and then last but certainly not least is supervise and refine. And this is the last TOP in the Army Troop Leading Procedures model. And this is again something that's going to happen throughout the duration of the TOPs, from the very beginning all the way through to the very end, until after you've made your assessment. And one of the first ways we do this after you give your order, again, is to conduct a confirmation brief. And that's you just asking very specific key questions to the people that you gave your order to. Next may come up doing some PCCs, or pre-combat checks. And I will tell you and strongly encourage, make sure that you have an actual checklist, and it's not just a verbal or oral interview, because somebody will always tell you the answer that they think that you want to hear, not necessarily the answer that you need to hear, right? And then physically and visually inspect everything, so that A, it's accounted for, and B, it works the way it's supposed to. And then of course we want to conduct some rehearsals. I cannot stress the importance and the value of conducting rehearsals at every echelon. So what do rehearsals do? One, they prove that our plan is probably going to work. I say probably because Murphy's out there and things are going to happen, but at least everybody understands their role and they understand what they have to do along each step along the way. The second thing it does is it provides an actual confirmation that the people understand what their roles truly are and what they entail, and what those implied tasks that you may not have actually specified. So how do we conduct rehearsals? A lot of times it may just be a map or a sketch rehearsal, or a rehearsal of concept. We're all just gathered around a big map on the ground or a terrain model, and we're working through, and sometimes those are okay, but what you really need to do, if time permits, is do an actual full force rehearsal from beginning to end, what's going to entail, because that's the only way to realistically gauge the true preparedness for your unit for that mission. All right, everybody, so there you go, TOPs 101. I know it's kind of a short introduction to a really complex, it's not really that complex. We do these things all the time. It's just that we don't have a shared common language for it. At least we're not as proficient at it as we should be. And I'm going to tell you, if you work through these steps, hands down, it will make sure that you and those who are in your charge are better prepared to execute the missions that come up. It doesn't matter if it's an administrative mission, if it's a training mission, or if it's an operational mission. It doesn't matter if it's a simple convoy moving from A to B, or going to a firing range, or preparing for a squad patrol. Use these things, use these TOPs in everything that you do, and I can promise you, you'll have a higher rate of success. Hey, so I hope you enjoyed the content of the video. If you did, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you can stay up to date. Most importantly though, leave some comments down below and let me know if you had any questions or any other insight that you may have from your experience on how TOPs have worked or have not worked. There's good stories and bad stories out there, and we'll continue on this conversation. And as always, until then, we'll see you.